Hey guys, tonight we creep into a cobblestone village where smoke curls from a single chimney. Your boots crunch on rye straw, scattered outside a weather-beaten door. The apothecary's lamplight bleeds through cracked shutters. Let's be real, you'd last 5 minutes here before mistaking Foxglove for Basil and hallucinating a duet with the town goat. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, wherever you're watching, whether it's 3 a.m. in Lisbon or high noon in Adelaide. Drop a comment with your city and the weirdest thing on your nightstand right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Copper kettles bubble on a hearth older than Newton's apple. You stir elderflower syrup, thick and golden as stolen honey, while shadows lick the walls. Remember how medieval docs prescribed this stuff for everything from fevers to bad luck. 16th century moms swore by its magic, but the clay jar in your grip tells another story. Its cracks hold whispers of a pandemic rumor. They said drinking from these vessels could cure the Black Death. Spoiler, it didn't. A knock fractures the silence. You freeze, the ladle drips onto your apron like a leaking hourglass. Through the warped glass, a figure hunched under a moth-eaten shawl. Their arm cradles a bundle tighter than a sailor's knot. You unlatch the door, night air slithers in, carrying the sour milk scent of a child's fever. Historians still argue whether old apothecaries used nightshade in their remedies. Looking at the mother's sunken eyes, you wonder if they'd risk it. The infant's blanket reeks of sweat and chamomile poultices gone wrong. You crush yarrow between your palms. Its pine-bite sharpness cuts through the room's rosemary haze. 73 petals, not 72. Never 72. Your mentor's voice hisses in your memory like a stubborn tea kettle. That extra petal meant the difference between soothing lungs and stopping them. Outside, an owl hoots. Inside, the mother's knuckles whiten around a silver locket. You recognize the engraving, St. Lucy, with hollowed-out eyes. Quirky fact: some villages buried those lockets during thunderstorms to ward off witchfires. You drop the yarrow into a tin cup, pour hot water, strained through linen. The brew steeps darker than barn blood. The first sips, always the test. The mother's gaze bores into you, her lips move in silent prayer. You press the cup to the child's mouth. A drop spills, sizzles on the hearthstone. Medieval moms weren't entirely wrong. Elderflower lowers fevers when you don't accidentally add mandrake root. The child's cough softens to a whimper. You wrap the syrup bottle in burlap, tie it with twine that smells of saddle leather. Payment: a handkerchief embroidered with lilies and 3 blackbird feathers. Standard barter for a Wednesday. As they leave, you notice the mother's left shoe, the soles worn through, a scarlet thread coiled around her ankle like a snake. You wipe the counter with vinegar rag. The lamplight flickers. Your shadow stretches toward a shelf of tinctures. Blue glass winks back arnica for bruises. hawthorn for broken hearts. That one unlabeled bottle in the corner. Let's just say every town needs a contingency plan. The fire dies to embers. Somewhere beyond the village, a wolf howls. Or maybe it's old man Fletcher's reformed husky. You extinguish the lamp. Let moonlight guide you to the back room. 16 drawers line the wall, each labeled in cipher. Third from the bottom, sticky, with pine resin. Inside rests a velvet pouch. Cinnamon sticks, a desiccated beetle, and a note fraying at the edges. Found your sister's doll by the mill pond. It was staring at the water. Burn this. You pocket the beetle. Its iridescent shell glints like a liar's smile. The doll can wait till dawn. For now, the ledger demands attention. You flip to today's page. Ink bleeds through parchment like a prophecy. Elderflower syrup, 1 bottle. Yarrow infusion, 2 doses. St. Lucy locket sightings, 17 this month. 17. Always 17. You sketch a raven in the margin, its beak open mid-caw. The town bell tolls once, a sound thicker than cemetery mud. Outside, something scrapes against the shop's foundation. Maybe roots, maybe claws. You blow out the candle, let the dark fill your lungs. Tomorrow's problem. Wind whistles through the keyhole, a tune halfway between a lullaby and a warning. You curl on the cot. Your breath sinks with the drip, drip, drip of the still room's leaky faucet. Some say apothecaries never truly sleep. They just pause. The last thing you hear before drifting off, the creak of a shutter swinging wide, or maybe, just maybe, a mother humming 3 streets over. Her voice weaves through the night, cradling a child's feverless dreams. The widow's copper kettle screams. You catch it just before boiling over. Lavender and bitter valerian swirl in the steam. Your fingers count 33 heartbeats between drips, too slow for proper tincture. Historians still argue whether pendulum clocks shortened medieval sleep cycles or just made people obsessive about counting minutes. You're leaning toward the ladder tonight. She arrives wrapped in moth-chewed cashmere, clutches a locket with her husband's portrait. The thing stopped opening 3 Sundays back. Her grandfather clock looms behind her, its pendulum dragging through river silt. You toss a cinnamon stick into the brew. Scent sharpens the air like a piano wire. Rub this on your temples, you say, handing her a vial of milky extract. But mind the dose. Valerian's cousin is what they make Valium from. Her laugh cracks like aged parchment. The clock groans. Its weights sink lower despite no one winding them. Midnight slumps against the windows. You pry open the clock's oak panel. Silt coats the gears like wet sugar. Someone's been burying things in tidal flats. The widow confesses through chamomile vapors. Her husband's pocket watch vanished the night he drowned. Clockmakers once wrapped pendulums in goat skin to self-clean. But this muck smells of kelp and apologies. Her pulse thrums against your fingertips, fast as a sparrow's. You slip a hawthorn thorn between the clock's teeth. The pendulum stills. Silence pools in the room, thick enough to blot out the dripping faucet. She leaves with the tincture and half your beeswax candles. The clock starts again at dawn. Its new rhythm matches the rotting wharf's tide charts. You press an ear to the cabinet. Something scritches inside like a crab in a jewelry box. 3 coins lie under the pendulum bob. Portuguese, judging by the eroded crest. Historians forget that Lisbon exported timepieces to every backwater port before the 1755 quake. You pocket the coins. The widow's footsteps echo down the lane, each step synchronized to the clock's metronome. Your mortar still holds traces of valerian. You wonder briefly if she'll return for the silt. Sea muck makes decent fertilizer, but terrible tea. The pendulum swings wider now, carving arcs in the air like a scythe. Moonlight slicks the floorboards. You map the clock's ticks against your own breath. They align on the 13th exhale. Coincidence or clever engineering? The answer crumbles like dried mugwort between your fingers. Dawn arrives without fanfare. The widow's shadow lingers on your threshold. Her clock chimes once, low and damp. You pour the cooled tincture into a blue glass bottle. The label sticks to your thumb, peels off half crooked. She'll never notice. Outside, the town fountain gurgles, a sound like clogged gears. Your last thought before sleep. Pendulum silt, when boiled, leaves rosettes of salt that taste of swallowed secrets. The clock ticks on. Its weights rise an inch untouched as your candle dies. Moonlight drapes over your garden like spilled mercury. Foxglove blooms bob in the breeze. You pull on leather gloves stiffened with beeswax. They crackle like autumn leaves underfoot. Historians still argue whether medieval herbalists wore gloves to avoid poison or just hated dirt under their nails. A badger snuffles at the fence, its striped face tilted in professional appraisal. Digitalis leaves cling to your fingers, velvet soft and dewy with night sweat. Church bells ghost through the valley, 3 slow tolls nobody else hears. You whisper the old rhyme, foxglove in the moonlight, foxglove in the dew, as your shears snick through stems. The badger huffs, apparently unimpressed by your horticultural serenade. Don't judge, you mutter, kneeling to avoid crushing wood betony. 17th century heart patients drank foxglove tea before anyone coined the term digitalis therapy, a fact you'd share if the badger cared. It waddles closer, eyes gleaming like twin vials of quicksilver. Someone's been stealing your yarrow. You recognize the muddy paw prints. Dew soaks through your kneecaps, cold as a mill pond in November. You bundle purple blooms in burlap. Their freckled throats exhale a honeyed sigh. The badger sneezes twice as pollen drifts toward its whiskers. Folk tales claim forest creatures guard medicinal plants, but this one's clearly auditing your inventory. Stones shift behind you, the sound of claws on flint. You pretend not to notice the badger nudging your herb basket. Wood smoke threads through the air. Old man Brenner's curring shed burns all night. Historians forget tobacco wasn't Europe's first cash crop. Monasteries sold foxglove tonics to nobles for 12 gold coins an ounce. The badger licks its paws, methodical as a surgeon scrubbing in. You toss it a dried fig. Watch those needle teeth reduce the fruit to pulp. Church bells again, 4 notes this time, but the village steeple burned down in 68. Your gloves leave powdery smudges on the basket handle, white fingerprints glowing in the dark. Dawn scratches at the horizon, a pale thumbnail against black wool clouds. The badger retreats, its shadow merging with tree roots as you murmur thanks to the soil. Some say certain plants grow better when addressed by their Latin names. You found politeness works wonders too. Bundles hang upside down from your rafters, foxglove crowns brushing against dried nettles. The badger's fig gift sits on your windowsill, a pinecone wrapped in cobwebs. You steep a single blossom in gin, its petals thin to translucent veins. First aid circa 1732, before somebody decided injections were a good idea. Rain taps Morse code on the roof. The badger's den will flood by noon. You seal tincture bottles with wax. Each pop echoes like a tiny cork gun. Historians still debate whether witch's glove referred to plant shape or just medieval marketing hype. Your back door creaks open. A familiar striped snout pokes through the gap. You're worse than the tax collector, you sigh, but refill the fig jar. The badger sneezes again and deposits a mangled pocket watch on your threshold, its gears rusted shut, face stained with river mud. You trade 3 figs for the relic, fair price, for a timepiece that stopped ticking before the plague hit Marseille. Dawn proper arrives, weak tea light filtering through cloud cracks. Foxglove poison can stop a heart or restart it, depends on the dose and the drinker's luck. The badger naps under your work table, snoring like a clogged bellows. You scratch its flea-bitten ear, wonder if it's the same creature your great-grandmother mentioned in her journals. Rain pools around the hanging foxglove, drip-dripping into your mortar. The badger dreams, paws twitching, as if counting coins. You burn a sprig of dried blooms. Sweet smoke coils into the shape of a lung. Breathing deep, you make a silent bet with Copernicus about which heavenly body this storm favors. Church bells ring once more, 5 chimes now, though your pocket watch insists it's 1/2 never. The foxglove tincture glows, a vial of captured moonlight. Historians will never agree on why we named a flower after glove-wearing foxes, but you've seen weirder marketing. The badger farts loudly and trots out into the downpour. You count 37 foxglove bundles, 38 if you include the one chewed by voles. 3 hawk moths batter the lantern, powdered wings leaving constellations on the glass. The badger's paw prints fossilize in fresh mud, each claw mark a tiny rune. You rub your stiff neck, blame the harvest, and swallow 6 drops of your own remedy. Dawn surrenders to drizzle. The foxglove sways, its secrets folded in purple fists. You document the harvest in cipher, using the badger's paw print as a period. One truth binds apothecaries through the ages, Every cure's a poison, wearing a good disguise. The pocket watch on your desk ticks. Once, though its hands haven't moved in centuries, drizzle slicks the cobblestones as you trudge toward Miller's Hollow, your cloak sucking at your shoulders like a leech. Time bunches clatter in your satchel, each rattle synced to the wheeze echoing down the lane. Old Tom's cough could strip bark from birches. You've seen crows flee mid-caw when he clears his throat. Historians love debating medieval cough syrups. None mention the real miracle was getting patients to swallow licorice root sludge. The mill's water wheel groans, its splintered paddles slapping the stream in ragged time. You count 6 seconds between each revolution, matching Tom's bronchial death rattle. A cat arches its back on the mill roof, fur sparking with static. 17th century Dutch painters adored putting cats in mills. Shame nobody studied why every miller since Nebuchadnezzar has that damned cough. Tom's door hangs open, a gap-toothed mouth, exhaling steam and linseed stink. You step over a threshold worn concave by generations of hobnail boots. His fireplace coughs smoke into the room, third-hand heat from burning green pine brought the usual. He rasps, voice like a saw tearing through wet oak. Honey glops from your flask, thick amber coils in the mortar. You grind time with the heel of a vodka bottle, inherited from a Moscow-trained bone setter. Tom's lungs gurgle. The water wheel outside creaks. Their duet could make a banshee wince. Some claim Miller's coughs come from grain dust. Others swear it's the river spirits punishing those who harness their power. You stir honey and thyme into black tea, watch carcinogenic steam curl toward the rafters. Tom's hands tremble, a wartime tremor from hauling flour bags while Berlin burned. Historians still argue whether Eastern Front PTSD caused more shakes than malnutrition. Ask the skeleton in his pantry. The mixture bubbles, its surface puckering like a gossip's lips. Drink, you order, pushing the mug across a table sticky with decades of schnapps. He grimaces, sips, and coughs so hard his cap flies into the fire. The water wheel screeches. A rusted nail surrenders to centrifugal force. Tastes like my ex-wife's perfume, he croaks. You shrug, toss a honeycomb into the embers. Greeks believed bee vomit could summon Asclepius. Tom just needs to stop inhaling flour like it's oxygen. The cat materializes on your lap, purrs vibrate through your femur. Outside, the stream churns white where the wheel slaps it into submission. His wheezing softens, a raspberry syrup, sigh escaping cracked lips. You leave a tincture by his bed, 30 drops in whiskey, 40 if the screams of fallen Soviets keep him awake. The mill's heartbeat slows, paddles kissing water with something like tenderness. Some say mills absorb their keepers, aches, wood, fibers swelling with every repressed memory. Rain purls on your hood as you depart. The cat watches from the mill's gable, its silhouette forked by lightning. You'll return in 3 days, find the tincture untouched, the honeycomb reduced to a charred hexagon. But for now, The wheel turns, the stream flows, and somewhere beneath mildew and rat piss, old Tom dreams of quiet. Moonlight gutters through cellar vents. As you kneel on packed earth, candle flames bowing toward gnarled mandrake roots. Their twisted forms remind you of arthritic hands. Some swear they twitch when the church bells toll. You brush soil from a root fork. Medieval surgeons once paid in silver for specimens like this. Patient mortality rates suggest they should have paid for malpractice. Instead, a draft licks the candles. Shadows writhe like hanged men swaying. Salt grates under your knees, the circle you drew last week now smeared. Mandrakes supposedly screamed when harvested. Romans claimed the shriek could kill. Modern botany blames popping root fibers. Your boots still tiptoe around the patch. Something sighs below, a vibration through the dirt that rattles molars. You press an ear to the floor. Cold seeps into your cheekbone. 17th century Welsh miners told of earth voices, though those were likely pocket-gnawing gas leaks. This feels deliberate. Your penknife nicks the mandrake's flank. Sap oozes blacker than printer's ink. You'd laugh if your throat weren't sandpaper. Celtic lore says these roots birth elves. Yours seems more likely to birth a lawsuit. The sigh comes again, deeper now, accompanied by a wet click. Historians still argue whether medieval cellars housed mystery cults or just really ambitious potato storage. Dampness creeps through your trousers as you arrange the offering. Sea salt and auburn hair snipped at midnight. The lock once belonged to the blacksmith's daughter, her laughter now hoarse from whispering through keyholes. Salt patterns scatter as unseen breath gusts from below. Candles snuff out one by one. Your matchbook's down to 3 sticks. Sunday's sermon rattles in your skull. Beware what stirs in unlit places. The pastor warned, clearly never tried dating in this town. The roots creak. Their sound mirrors the widow's rocking chair 6 streets over. Mandrake tea could end this investigation. But the dosage for visions versus cardiac arrest remains tragically unclear. The final candle dies darkness, swallows the cellar whole. Your palm finds the mandrake's face like tubercle. Its nose crumbles like ancient parchment. Athenian emperors drank mandrake wine before battles. Their chronicles omit how many tripped over their own spears. That wet click resurfaces, closer now, as if something's testing a dislocated jaw. You retreat backward up the steps, backpack snagging cobwebs, thick as bridal veils. Some swear salt wards off spirits, others just want an excuse for bad soup. Your offering remains untouched, except the hair now coils into a perfect Celtic knot. Dawn bleeds through cracks in the trapdoor. Below, one candle reignites with a flame the color of spoiled milk. You'll need stronger herbs. Next time, maybe that hallucinogenic sage from the mayor's rooftop garden. A floorboard shifts, then stillness, as the cellar exhales the shared breath of everything buried too soon. Dawn's pale fingers pry open the apothecary shutters. Your mortar, still crusted with last night's mandrake grit. St. John's wort floats in a jar of goat's milk. Medieval healers swore it trapped demons in golden droplets. Across the street, the cobbler's awning sags like a tired eyelid. His shop hasn't opened in 9 days, not since sleep became a rumor whispered between hammer strokes. You twist corks into tincture bottles, their glass still warm from the drying rack. 17th century cobblers believed lost tools were stolen by soul imps, tiny gremlins craving the taste of shoe polish. The myth feels less funny when his all gleams in your apron pocket, dredged from Owl Creek with algae clinging to its curve. 3 poppets stare from the workbench, their felted bodies studded with juniper berries for eyes. Needles shimmer in their chests, each threaded with yarn from the widow's unraveling mourning shawl. Tudor servants hid similar dolls under noble beds, a risky alternative to asking for fair wages. Church bells toll 7, the sound warps as it crosses your threshold. Heat rises from the steeping herb, its crimson oil spreading through milk like blood in snow. You strain liquid through muslin. The cloth catches something that moves. Not a leaf, not a petal, just motion. Outside, boots scrape cobblestones. The cobbler's apprentice hovers in your doorway, his apron strings chewed by something with sharp teeth. Master Grindle requests. The boy's pupils swallow sapphire irises whole. His tools. You pour the infusion into a cobalt vial. Sunlight turns it liquid topaz. Roman soldiers drank St. John's wort before battle, though historians still argue whether it prevented panic or just diarrhea. The apprentice retreats as you drizzle oil across the poppets, their juniper eyes darken to rotten plums. Floorboards creak. Upstairs, the attic door you've never managed to fully close. Something thumps once, twice, in the rhythm of a heel, seeking its last nail. Your kettle whistles 2 octaves higher than physics allow. Needle points bite your thumb. 3 crimson beads well up. Victorian scientists claimed pricking poppets transmitted nervous energies. Their journals omit how often assistants quit mid-experiment. You smear blood across the awl's handle. Its pitted steel drinks the offering greedily. Noon heat warps the shop's sign, apothecary letters melting into apology. The cobbler's shadow lengthens across your threshold, stretching further than trigonometry permits. His left eye won't stop blinking. His right stays desert dry. Found your all. You lie palming the tool still slick with creek muck. 17th century etiquette guides never covered returning cursed implements. His fingers brush yours, skin colder than a butcher's meat locker. The awl twitches, a minnow's death throw in your grasp. He retreats hunched, as if dragging an anvil chained to his sternum. Historians still argue whether Renaissance poppet rituals channeled real magic or just gave bored seamstresses power fantasies. Through the window, you watch him stab leather with possessed precision, each puncture mirroring the poppet needle's alignment. Sunset stains the street ochre. You bury the dolls under rose bushes, their yarn hearts still humming. Nightshade blooms furl as soil reclaims the felted bodies. Someone once told you shoemakers trap whispers in souls, stories stitched between layers of calfskin. The attic door slams once as you bank the hearth. 3 coins rest on your desk, minted the year Grindel's daughter drowned. Their edges glitter with creekbed mica. Outside, his lamplit silhouette works through midnight. Hammer strikes echoing the pulse behind your temples. Sleep comes like a thief wary of tripwires. Dawn finds your boots nailed to the floorboards, 6 penny brads spelling a Baltic protection rune. The awl lies on your pillow, clean now, its tip stained the brown of dried reeds. Grindel's shop remains closed. His apprentice brings rye bread and a ledger page, each hour marked with tiny shoe sketches. The last entry shows a boot with teeth where laces should be. You brew more St. John's wort, this time adding honey to spite the bitter aftertaste. Rain drums the roof at twilight. The poppets have sprouted thorned vines, now strangling your rose bushes. Their juniper eyes blink in unison, a staccato rhythm matching the cobbler's frantic Pegasus stitch. You salt the earth, whispering apologies to whatever listens. Midnight oil paints the walls amber. The awl carves its own path across parchment, sketching souls that curl like fiddleheads. Somewhere, a hammer strikes an anvil. Somewhere, a girl's laughter bubbles through creek water. You pocket 3 thistle seeds, their barbs pricking your thigh, with every step toward dawn. Moonlight slicks the apothecary's countertop, your fingers brush a barn owl feather's serrated edge. Chamomile petals wilt in the mortar, their apple sweetness clashing with the attic's mildew musk. Outside, a child's sob hitches between cricket chirps. You recognize the cadence, the schoolteacher's youngest, though you've never heard her laugh. 3 drops of brandy ignite the tincture. Blue flames dance in the feather's veins. Ancient Egyptians steeped chamomile in wine for hysterical women, though their definition of hysteria included wanting to inherit land. The girl's nightgown shimmers through your window, salt trails crystallized on linen like frozen tear tracks. It followed me from the creek. She whispers, her knees caked in riverbank clay. A ripe plum bruise blooms above her collarbone, fingerprint shaped. You don't ask about her father's new friend from the tannery, the one who reeks of juniper gin and pennyroyal. Owl down drifts from the rafters, tickling your forearm like a skeptic's chuckle. Medieval midwives stuffed pillows with owl feathers to prevent prophetic dreams, never specifying whose visions got blocked. You spin the tincture bottle, liquid sloshing like a miniature ocean trapped in glass. Her hands tremble as you dab oil behind her ears, a trick learned from a Marseille perfumer in 23. The bruise darkens, veins branching into delta maps of rivers you've never crossed. Chamomile smoke curls around her ankles. Historians still argue whether its calming properties stem from chemistry or collective wishful thinking. Floorboards groan under unseen weight, dust motes swirl into owl-shaped vortices. The girl freezes, her pupils swallowing irises whole, as the front door creaks open without wind. A school primer drops from her grasp, arithmetic problems, blotted with ink-smudged owls. You crush dried borage into the mixture, its starflower petals crunching like tiny bones. Victorian herbalists claimed borage brought courage, though their Journ, a L-S Chinese letter, drinking it with enough sherry to floor a cavalry officer. The tincture froths pink, the color of shame and diluted blood. Swallow this, and don't think about white horses. She gulps it like sacramental wine, grimacing at the bitterness. Owl feathers ruffle overhead, an unspoken punchline to a joke only predators understand. Her nightgown's tears crystallize further, salt creeping toward the hem like frost on a doomed rose. Midnight stains your hands indigo as you knot the feather into her braid, crude imitation of Etruscan ritual wards. The attic door slams once as she flees into moonlit streets. 17 crushed chrysanthemum heads later, you realize she stole your silver measuring spoons. Dawn finds owl pellets on the windowsill, bone fragments arranged into Cyrillic letters. The schoolteacher's chimney smokes, despite his 3-week absence. A silhouette too tall for the girl flickers behind Chinese letter streaked glass. You brew more chamomile, this time adding honey, and a truth serum labeled for external use only. Raindrops pockmark the riverbank clay trail, each filled with wriggling tadpoles by noon. The feather in her braid will molt tomorrow, releasing 13 time-ticking lice into her scalp. You bury the owl pellets under a hawthorn tree, its blossoms reeking of rotting teeth and compromised alibis. Twilight brings muffled hoofbeats. Her nightgown flutters from the church rafters during vespers. The schoolteacher's new boots leave prints deeper than a man twice his weight. You burn juniper needles, their smoke drawing owl shadows that blot out constellations named for dead lovers. Your last tincture bottle holds a single dark hair plucked mid-ritual from the girl's crown. Renaissance physicians would have sold it as a virginity charm, though you're pretty sure Leonora Daddy hiked her prices based on client desperation. The attic hums a lullaby in reverse, notes curdling like milk in a widow's churn. Moonrise stains the apothecary blue. You dip a new feather stolen from a taxidermied owl in beetroot juice and regret. Outside, the silhouette at the schoolhouse window lifts 3 bandaged fingers. Inside, primordial soup boils in your forgotten teacup, tadpole tails thrashing against Earl Grey waves. The crossroads exhales wet earth and crushed bergamot. Your boothiel grinds a cowrie shell into the mud. 3 bronze coins warm in your palm, minted when York was still Eboracum, if the patina's right. Historians still argue whether Roman soldiers paid Karen's obol at crossroads or just lost their wages gambling. You press the first coin vertically into soil, tarnished profile of Hadrian staring skyward like he's judging your life choices. Nightshade blooms pulsate nearby, their heart-shaped petals miming sincerity. Medieval execution sites often became crossroads, the theory being spirits get confused by intersecting paths. Your pinky nail snaps against a rock, the cuticle bleeds blackberry dark. Second coin goes southeast, Theodora's stern brow sinking beneath loam. A badger shambles past, claws clickety-clacking like a dropped rosary. You scatter withered yarrow over the coins, its musty tang clashing with wafts of distant bakery ovens. Renaissance magicians swore yarrow braids could summon dark lovers, or at least make neighbors. Hens lay blue eggs. The final coin slips from your grip, rolls toward the western path. You lunge, knees barking against shale, but the disc plinks into a shadowed stream. 17 breaths pass before you concede defeat. Crossroads magic demands precision. Now you're one obble short and ankle deep in regret. The yarrow quivers, roots coiling around your abandoned offering. Something hums beneath your soles, a cellar-deep frequency that liquefies marrow. Not how the manuals describe it, is it? Your chuckle sounds borrowed, thin and crackling as old vellum. Moonlight fractures through storm clouds, casting 9 overlapping shadows from your stance. Visigoth warriors allegedly buried swords at junctions to confuse ancestral ghosts, though their poems mention more mead and fewer spectral logistics. Mist congeals into something knee-high and serpentine. It tastes of burnt horehound when you inhale too sharply. The humming sharpens, a dentist's drill serenading a migraine. You fumble for vervain in your satchel, its dried spikes stabbing through muslin. No figure emerges. Your right molar cracks, a hairline fracture singing with every basso thrum. Augustus' third coin still MIA, must be laughing in whatever afterlife bureaucrats inhabit. You crush vervain over the compromised offering, green dust devils swirling counterclockwise. The hum falters, a phonograph winding down. Dew forms obsidian beads on the yarrow, each reflecting a different constellation. 16th century grimoires warn against crossroads dew collection, or praise it for gout remedies. Accounts vary. Your canteen's already full of questionable liquids. Why not add apocalyptic condensation? The eastern path sighs a breeze, carries ash and candied violets. Your stolen taxidermy, owl feather levitates, twitching like a dowsing rod on meth. 3 heartbeats of silence. Then the earth vomits your lost coin. Hadrian's face now sports a sneer. Fair enough. You rebury the trio properly, knuckles brushing something cold, and scaly 6 inches down. 12 seconds pass before realizing your gloves are fingerless. The hum dissolves into drizzle, each raindrop imprinting tiny hoofprints in mud. By dawn, the yarrow sprouts infant buds, blood red and reeking of rusted nails. The coins are gone, but your left pocket jingles with unfamiliar silver. A trade's a trade, even when your dance partner ghosts the ballroom. Moss creeps over the disturbed earth, spelling Coptic symbols, even the monastery's linguist couldn't parse. Last Easter, you spit into the stream, water recoils, and trudge home as magpies declaim your failures in iambic pentameter. Juniper berries burst under your pestle, their resin stings like a jilted lover's goodbye. Cider froths in the oak barrel. That's Edric's sour mash, though it smells closer to sorrow brewed with bad decisions. His tavern sign creaks outside, a chipped lion devouring its own tail. 17 years ago, monks planted these junipers for sacramental gin, or possibly to sterilize ale. Historians get vague after the 7th footnote. Your knuckle brushes the barrel's iron band. Rust flakes mingle with berry pulp. Medieval brewers believed juniper prevented conception, an old Germanic trick before rubber and awkward pharmacy visits. The liquid inhales as you stir, a gurgling suck that puckers your molars. Edric swore this batch would mellow his wife's ghost. 23 nights since she stopped rattling the shutters, 43 since her funeral violets froze mid-bloom. Blessed silence, he'd claimed, ignoring how his own laughter now curdles milk in the cellar. You drizzle honeycomb into the mash, threads of gold dissolving like his wedding vows. Tudor taverns added hemlock for pep, which explains their 5-year average lifespans. The wooden spoon warps, handle bending toward the boarded windows. Her giggle trickles through a knothole April rain on a tin roof. You press a copper bell against the barrel. It vibrates at middle C. Renaissance tuning forks were forged from dismantled church bells. Sacrilege or sacrament, depending on who got paid. The sour tang intensifies, pickled despair with top notes of self-pity. A cork pops on its own. Liquid arcs toward the rafters. You leap back as droplets singe your apron. 17th century lawsuits document killer mead incidents. Plaintiffs dissolving in courtroom mid-testimony. The puddle hisses, etching a map of the Rhine into floorboards. Edric's ledger lies open, 18 years of deliveries, marked with X's darker than dried blood. Moonlight slants through a crack, illuminating a spoon wedged in the mortar. Silver engraved with Norse runes for fidelity. His wife's initials hide between the symbols, tiny CS like chained moons. Historians still argue whether Viking settlers taught Yorkshire smiths rune carving or just had killer branding. You pocket the spoon, its bowl sears wool, but leaves skin unharmed. The barrel groans, a basso profundo that rattles your ribcage. You counter with a dandelion stem, its hollow core sucking up cider like a boozy capillary. Alchemists called this the poor man's siphon. Actual poor men called it Tuesday. The liquid tastes of unwashed chessboards and a dowry squandered at dice. Edric's laugh barrels downstairs, a sawtooth sound fraying at the edges. His shadow stretches across the mead-stained Rhine, a elongated figure with too many joints. Your boots adhere to the floor, molasses-thick air gluing each step. 8 heartbeats to reach the exit, leaving blurred footprints in the sawdust. The tavern door slams your elbow jostles a row of tankards. They chime, a nursery rhyme in the Lydian mode. Byzantine merchants bribed tavern keeps with musical cups until the Huns preferred drinking from enemy skulls. You're halfway up Owl Lane when the first shriek pierces the fog, a sound like wet parchment tearing. Dawn finds you scrubbing cider stink from your sleeves. The spoon's runes glow faintly in the washtub, each sigil pulsing with yesterday's regrets. Edric's laughter still echoes through the lich gate, though whether it's his or hers now, your ears refuse to decide. Beeswax pools in cedar molds, your thumbprint warps the hardening gold. Dawn's heat brings the hayloft stench rotten clover and venom simmering under warped boards. Farmer Breaglach arrives scratching his forearms, a lattice of red hexagons. 17th century candle makers mixed beeswax with corpse fat for everlasting flames. Hence, all those haunted church inventories. His left eye twitches, a tick synced to distant buzzing through his jawbone. They're building something under the hay, he rasps. Not combs, shapes. Angry shapes. You pocket a mold, wax still soft enough to cradle secrets. Medieval beekeepers whispered troubles into hives, believing hexagons could trap sorrows like honey. The farmer's boots shed hayseed onto your floor, each blade bent at perfect 60-degree angles. His sleeve tears as he gestures, scabbed pores ooze something clear and sweet. Smell that. Like the queens laughing at me, apiarists once buried stillborn calves near hives to sweeten the honey. A Norse superstition the church banned in 1321. You press a cedar square to his wrist. The wax drinks his fever. The hayloft timbers hum, a chord trapped between B-flat and nowhere. Your boots sink into spongy earth, fermented pollen squelches underfoot. Colonies often mirror their keepers' maladies. Histories debate whether Ephesian priestesses triggered colony collapse by distracting rituals. A honeycomb fragment crumbles in your palm, each cell etched with minuscule runes. Breaglach's ladder creaks, 18 rungs groan like overstrung cellos. The hive pulsates, a living kaleidoscope sharp enough to cut moonlight. Shadowed forms dart through comb corridors, too sleek for worker bees. One grazes your ear, its buzz quotes Cicero's lost speeches. Renaissance diplomats used royal jelly to enhance memory, and also as a laxative. Your knife nicks the comb's edge, honey bleeds black. The farmer's scratches burn hotter, sympathetic ink linking flesh to hive. 17 hexagonal welts now, each aligned to Pleiades stars visible at his birth. Medieval midwives placed birthing chairs near apiaries, believing bee-song eased labor pains. You pocket a drone's corpse, its wings fold into Pythagorean triangles. Burn it, Breaglach pleads, his breath sweetened by venom hallucinations. Burn it all. But the hive inhales, drawing your match flame into its heart. Cold fire ripples through wax corridors, a blue-green shimmer that reeks of betrayal. Farmers in Gaul painted hives with woad during invasions, though Caesar's cooks called the honey regrettably patriotic. You drop the smoldering match. Its ashes curl into a Fibonacci spiral. The farmer collapses, his wheezes now a perfect B-flat. Under the hay, something vibrates, 1,000 wings tuning to his dying note. Historians still argue whether Pharaoh's architects borrowed honeycomb geometry or just had really obsessive bees. A honey drop hits your boot, etches a tiny hexagon into the leather. Back in the shop, you float beeswax discs in brine. Breaglatch's payment, a jar of thrice-stolen honey, glows faintly under the rafters. The drone's corpse stirs in the mortar, a leg twitching as you grind it with nightshade. Its final buzz tastes of forgotten alliances, Byzantine treaties sealed with honey wine and lies. Through the window, the hayloft sinks 6 inches overnight. Your thumb finds the wax mold's imprint, a reverse hexagon pressing back with equal force. The farmer's screams stopped at midnight, his silence now the hive's most perfect comb. Midnight dew beads on the ghost lily stem, a white cup unfolding where you buried the miller's lockbox. 17th century healers used similar blooms to numb surgical pain and, occasionally, to poison rival suitors. The seamstress materializes at your gate. Her left sleeve flutters, empty despite the windless dark. Historians still argue whether Cleopatra's famous milk baths contained crushed lilies or just goat cream and propaganda. It started with needle pricks, she whispers, holding up a hand like smoked glass. Now customers see straight through my embroidery. Her thimble gleams stained with something darker than blood. Victorian botanists claimed ghost lilies only grew where disgraced clergymen were buried, though your soil's just river silt and old wine dregs. You snap the stem, sap numbs your fingertips before the cut seals itself. Queen Anne's lace, too fragile nightshade, too obvious. This bloom drinks moonlight like a gossip gulps cheap gin. The seamstress shivers, transparency creeping past her wrist. They say you helped the blacksmith when his forge went cold. Candlelight fractures through her palm, casting chessboard shadows on the workbench. Ancient Persians brewed ghost lily wine to commune with the dead, though most just vomited under olive trees. You steep petals in vinegar. The steam twists into cursive fog. Her wedding ring slips through fading flesh, clinks against the mortar bowl. Does it hurt? You ask, stirring the tincture clockwise. She flexes spectral fingers, a raspberry bush visible through her knuckles. Only when I forget which parts are real. 18th century seamstresses secretly wore lily root necklaces, believing thorns could snag back stolen childhood years. The brew froths, emitting a scent like burnt rosemary and regret. Dawn's first light catches her wrist for 3 heartbeats. Flesh solidifies. You dab tincture where her pulse should be, skin knitting like hurried stitches. Come back at moonset. You warn, wiping lily pollen from your sleeve, and stop accepting commissions for burial shrouds. She leaves through the herb garden chamomile heads, bowing where her shadow fails. The ghost lilies already regrowing, New buds hum with wasp-wing vibrations. Archaeologists found similar flowers pressed between pages of the Voynich manuscript right before their pencils started writing backwards. Your left pinky stays numb. Small price for peeking behind death's lace curtain. By noon, the tincture separates, clear liquid over chalky sediment. You bottle it with a crow's quill, avoiding metal's grounding influence. Through the window, the seamstress's shop sign swings, while her shadow remains still. Medieval asylums hung ghost lily wreaths to pacify violent patients, and occasionally to silence inconvenient witnesses. Footsteps crunch on your gravel path, but the door knocker stays silent. A folded nightgown appears on the stoop, stitched with lilies that wilt as you watch. The final petal melts into mist before reaching your palm, its coldness lingering like a widow's postponed goodbye. Your elbow deep in comfrey paste when the blacksmith's shadow darkens the doorframe, his right hand wrapped in smoldering rags. 17th century armorers soaked burns in horse urine, but you'll stick to chilled witch hazel and regret. His palm glows through the bandages, a forge's heartbeat pulsing under blistered skin. It started during the Whitby job. He grunts, jerking his chin toward the northern hills. Anvil's been singing ever since. The poultice sizzles on contact. Steam curls into miniature storm clouds above his wrist. You unravel charred linen. Each layer flakes like ash from a funeral pyre. Historians still argue whether Roman blacksmiths deliberately quenched blades in blood, or if that's just Viking recruitment propaganda. His fingerprints shimmer, molten silver swirling beneath cracked calluses. Heard you fixed the seamstress, he says, wincing as you press a yarrow compressed to his knuckles. A joke throbs in your throat about men who play with fire, but his eyes dart to the window. The northern horizon pulses crimson, though every forge in the valley's been cold since Lent. Iron Age smiths buried their tools during lunar eclipses. Yours just won't stay buried. Cooled metal sings from his rucksack, a horseshoe warped into a perfect treble clef. Found this stuck to my chimney, he mutters. You balance it on the pestle. Its vibration rattles dormant poppy seeds in their jars. 18th century tinsmiths believed humming anvils predicted thunderstorms or approaching tax collectors. His palm weeps liquid iron, each droplet hisses against your clay tiles. You catch 3 in a tin cup. They harden into jagged twilight blue scales. The air tastes of scorched copper and inadequacy. Did you piss on a sacred burial mound again? You ask, sweeping molten residue into a salt jar. His silence answers louder than the anvil's drone. Midnight approaches. The horseshoe's hum synchronizes with his pulse. You grind magnetite into moonflower oil, creating a salve that repels celestial interference or attracts it. Recipes get fuzzy after the 14th ingredient. He flexes his treated hand. A shimmering vein now connects his ring finger to the northern glow. Ever heard the Hammersmith ballad? He asks, suddenly sheepish. You recall tavern verses about a smith who welded shut hell's gates and got stuck holding the key. His laugh sounds like a whetstone on rusted chains. They left out the part about phantom fires. Dawn leaks through the shutters. His burns have cooled to obsidian swirls. The horseshoe falls silent, leaving your ears ringing with false quiet. You pack his rucksack with ironweed tinctures and a warning. No more midnight reforging, unless you fancy becoming a human lightning rod. He lingers at the threshold, tracing the scarred doorframe with his healed hand. The song's changing, he murmurs. Now it's asking for something. Cold precision, that's what the best blades demand. But when you glance up, he's already gone. The tin cup overflows with blue scales. They clink like dishonest coins. All day, your compass spins toward the blackened hillside where his forge never sleeps. You drown the scales in cider vinegar. They dissolve into an ink-like sludge that smells of burnt hair and unfinished business. 19th century miners drank similar concoctions to avoid cave-ins or to summon them. By twilight, the sludge sketches maps on parchment, riverless valleys, and compass roses with too many points. The northern glow intensifies, a forge's arrhythmia visible through thickening clouds. Your best shears float toward it, hovering like penitent birds. Rain arrives, each drop steaming where it hits the blacksmith's bootprints. You're debating a fourth cup of mushroom tea when the cup itself twists into a bronze hammer. Its handle fits the seamstress's transparent grip perfectly. The anvil's song crescendos, a melody older than bellows or breath. You bury your last iron nail under the hawthorn tree just in case. Some debts aren't worth collecting. Milkweed silk clings to your sleeves like cobwebs spun from ghost breath. The dairy maid's lantern gutters as she stomps mud onto your hemp rug. 17th century midwives stuffed pillows with these silken fibers to ward off stillbirths, though you doubt that's why her apron bulges with stolen pods. Her cheeks flush beetroot red under freckles, a constellation map of some angry agrarian zodiac. They ain't just wanderin' this time, she hisses. The hoofprints circle the well, 16 times exact. You crush dried milkweed leaves, their bitter powder tickles your sinuses. Colonial farmers believed hanging pods above barn doors deterred witches, though methinks the rodents disliked the latex sap more. The maid slaps a burlap bundle onto your counter calf hooves, wrapped in sodden parchment. They're still warm. Midnight wind hums through gaps in the stone walls. It carries the wrong kind of moo, not the contented chewing of cud, but the wet gurgle of something imitating. Historians still debate whether pioneers truly used milkweed fibers for candle wicks, or just told that lie to endure the smell. You knead the hooves into a mortar, bone fragments splinter under the pestle. Her calloused hand slams over yours. Not for grindin', she snaps, for trackin'. The lantern light warps. Suddenly you're 9 years old again, scrubbing inkwells under Sister Agatha's ruler. You acquiesce, dusting the hooves with powdered limestone. Their edges glow faintly green. The well yawns at the pasture's edge, its stones slick with algae older than the town charter. Hoofprints spiral inward, each deeper than the last. 17 paces out, your boots sink to the ankles. Fool's bog, the maid mutters, but you're counting. 16 circuits, always 16. Roman engineers swore bogs were gateways to Dis, but their maps placed hell conveniently south of payroll offices. Milkweed sap oozes over your fingers, sticky as regret. You dribble it into the deepest print. It pools, then stretches into a quivering thread, leading west. The maid crosses herself with a hand that reeks of sour cream. Coyotes howl in the woods, their usual yips replaced by sonorous bellows. Some alchemists claimed distillation of milkweed root could mimic any animal's cry if you didn't mind going bald. The thread tugs your wrist toward a thicket of blackthorn bushes. Brambles part like a theater curtain, revealing a hollow strewn with calf skulls. All facing east, all polished smooth. The maid's lantern dies with a whimper. Moonlight filters through milkweed pods dangling above their seeds, twitch like insect legs. Something heavy exhales behind the hillock. Your makeshift thread snaps, sap hardening into a scale model of the well's capstone. They're using the calves, the maid whispers. Her breath frosts in the July heat. To weight the rope, you pocket the sapstone. Its edges bite your palm through the wool. 19th century sailors blamed milkweed for luring ships ashore, but mistook its poison for an efficacy. Back at the shop, you steep the hooves in vinegar. They dissolve into a gelatinous mass that reeks of clover and iron. The dairy maid watches, knuckling tears into the wood grain. They'll take Daisy next, she mutters. Her prized Jersey heifer, smarter than half the town council. You carve a milkweed stalk into a crude flute. Wartime pilots once chewed the roots to stay alert, though you'd rather risk dozing than that bitterness. The first note screeches, a sound like steam escaping a tomb. The gelatin trembles, then slithers into the floor cracks. Daisy's bell echoes down the lane, a comforting clang, until it's not. You're sprinting through dew-drenched pasture, the maid's wail harmonizing with your flute's dying wheeze. The well's capstone lies shattered, milkweed tendrils coil around a frayed hemp rope. It stretches taut into the void as if something below still strains against the weight. You toss the sapstone down the shaft, it plunks, then clinks, then splash. The maid grips your arm hard enough to bruise. Far below, water ripples, but the town well's been dry since the earthquake of 23. Dawn bleeds across the sky. The hoofprints have vanished. Daisy grazes peacefully, her udder swaying to a rhythm none of you can hear. The maid departs with a jar of milkweed salve and instructions to anoint the well nightly. You don't mention the blisters already bubbling on your flute hand, or how the sapstone in your pocket now hums a lullaby in reverse. By midday, the town gossip mill churns. Old widow Pevensey claims she saw a bull with too many joints drinking from the creek. You're pickling the last milkweed pod when the sheriff arrives, his badge tarnished from accidental polish. His sneer wilts as you slide the sapstone across the counter. It spins and stops, spins again, pointing steadfastly west, toward the blackened hills, toward the smithy's eternal forge. He pockets it without thanks. The pod bursts in its brine. Silky seeds swirl into a miniature cyclone above the jar. You write it off as a draft until they curl into the congee for hunger. Twilight finds you replanting milkweed along the pasture's edge. Some roots refuse to take, their ends chewed by teeth that leave no marks. The well's new capstone fits too perfectly. As dew gathers, you swear the hemp rope shimmers, a milkweed thread spun from moonlight and unfinished business. Belladonna seeds crackle under your pestle, their dust coats the mortar like volcanic ash. Renaissance dames once dripped this poison into their eyes to mimic arousal. A beauty trend deadlier than any corset. The mayor's housekeeper barges in reeking of lamp oil and wilted peonies. Her gloves leave smudges on your counter, charcoal gray fingerprints that refuse to wipe clean. It's the portrait again, she croaks. Cracks spread faster since equinox. Her thumbnail digs into the wood, etching accidental runes. You pocket a seed pod. Its berries squish like overripe dates. Ottoman assassins favored belladonna-tipped darts, though their targets rarely survived long enough to identify the bitter aftertaste. Town Square lies unnervingly silent as you approach the mayor's manor. No clatter of hooves or fishmongers' curses. The bell tower looms, its bronze giant mute since the fire of 19. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants really silenced church bells during plagues, or just lost the strength to pull ropes. Your boots echo on marble steps, each footfall sharp as a jury's verdict. The portrait stares from its cracked frame. Miss Annabelle Leclerc, at 16, her smile, a touch too wide for the corseted era. Pigment flakes drift like infected snow. You press a belladonna leaf to the canvas. Veins pulse beneath the oil paint. Northern shamans swore poisoned berries could trap souls in portraits if you didn't mind dissolving your own liver first. Dust motes swirl in a sunbeam, freezing midair when the housekeeper sneezes. A faint metallic hum vibrates your molars. The mayor's pocket watch ticks backward in his study, its gears clogged with powdered lapis lazuli. You trace a dust spiral on the windowsill. It spells Tuesday in Coptic script. No one here reads Coptic. Nightfall finds you brewing belladonna tea. Steam curls into shapes resembling the Leclerc family crest. 3 generations of mayors died clutching their throats all within view of that damned portrait. Victorian mediums recommended belladonna tinctures for clairvoyance, a practice that halved London's psychic population by 1893. The housekeeper returns, toting a velvet sack that bleeds black pollen. From the bell chamber, she wheezes. Inside, a corroded clapper wrapped in Annabelle's childhood braids. The hair squirms, itching to rearrange itself into something older. Your tea reflects the ceiling, except the beams twist into gallows. Choking fumes erupt as you dip the clapper into the brew. Patina melts to reveal silver etched with giraffes. Boston silversmiths hid pagan iconography for wealthy clients, until the Salem trials made exoticism a capital offense. The housekeeper collapses her snores, syncing with the portrait's increasingly audible heartbeat. Midnight oil lamps gutter out. You relight them, using belladonna leaves. Green flames cast upside-down shadows. Annabelle's painted eyes follow them instead of you. The clapper vibrates, humming a nursery rhyme about a well and a missing key. You stuff wool in your ears. It ignites spontaneously. Dawn exposes the truth. Every mirror in the manor now reflects the bell-tower, but its bell's missing. The mayor stumbles in, cravat stained with what you hope is port. His pocket watch ticks normally. If noon were spelled with 3 silent Ks, we'll commission a new portrait. He slurs, palming a belladonna berry like a worry stone. His signet ring leaves burns on your ledger. 3 blocks away, the town beggar swears the silent bell tolled once at sunrise in a minor key. By twilight, you've scrubbed belladonna residue from every crevice. The housekeeper's fingerprints remain, now spelling mercy in braille only spiders can read. You bury the toxic tea leaves under a rowan sapling. Its roots recoil from the offering. The sheriff arrives as moonlight filters through your shop's warped panes. His breath reeks of Annabelle's signature rosewater soap. He drops the sack, clapper now fused to a giraffe-shaped weather vane. Without a word, he grabs your vial of belladonna extract and drinks it like mother's milk. His pupils dilate, swallowing the iris whole. She prefers her tea sweetened now, he rasps. The shop door slams, a gust extinguishes your lamps. In the dark, something chuckles with the mayor's voice from the wrong side of the pestle. Morning finds the portrait restored. Annabelle's smile softer, her eyes trained east toward the bell-tower. No one comments on the new clapper's giraffe motifs, or the sheriff's sudden expertise in Swahili animal proverbs. You burn belladonna seeds in a censer. Smoke writhes into the shape of a key. It points to the manor's wine cellar, where 16 empty portraits hang, all facing a bell that hasn't existed since Napoleon's era. As church bells toll across neighboring towns, yours remains silent. The housekeeper delivers a jar of apology honey, swarming with belladonna pollen. You feed it to the cellar rats. They begin composing limericks in perfect Elizabethan meter. By month's end, the rowan sapling withers, but a lone belladonna plant thrives in its place. Its berries glisten, each reflecting a different angle of the mayor's untouched bedroom. When wind rustles the leaves, it sounds suspiciously like a key turning in a lock, one that shouldn't exist this side of the Mason-Dixon line. Rowan shavings curl beneath your knife, their scent sharper than the lavender bunch wilting on your workbench. You line the crib's hollow with bruised petals, a trick Victorian nursemaids used to ward off night vapors. The carpenter's wife hovers in your doorway, her swollen belly casting a moon shadow across fresh carved wood. They say Rowan protects against enchantment. She murmurs, knuckles whitening on the doorframe. Historians still argue whether medieval Welsh cribs used hawthorn or rowan for warding, the difference between pacifying fairies and inviting them. Your chisel slips, gouging a smile into the footboard deeper than intended. Nightshade oil glistens on the crib's joints. You swear it pulses in time with her unborn's kicks. 17th century midwives rubbed belladonna on birthing chairs to ease labor, though half their clients bled out before dawn. The wood groans. Rowan shouldn't bend that way when green. She gasps as her waters break, fluid dark, as steeped tea pooling on your floorboards. You toss salt over the puddle. It hisses like bacon on a skillet. Something thumps inside her swollen abdomen, distinctly left of the navel. He's never kicked so hard, she pants, clutching the doorframe until splinters pierce her palms. You press a lavender sachet to her wrist. The fibers squirm like insect legs. Arctic shamans once buried Rowan cradles in permafrost, claiming the cold ripened the wood's protective magic. The crib rocks empty, its nightshade joints creaking a lullaby in Dorian mode. You guide her onto a stool padded with moth-eaten velveteen. Its original owner died screaming during the Boston Tea Party. Rowan shavings ignite in your hearth flames, casting upside-down cradle shapes on the ceiling. Her screams blend with the keening wood. Each contraction makes the crib's carvings shift. A tendril of smoke snakes from the fireplace, coiling around her ankles like a beneficent adder. You crush poppy heads into goat's milk. The mixture curdles instantly. Drink, you urge, holding the clotted mess to her lips. Tudor wet nurses guzzled poppy syrup to quiet colicky infants, and occasionally forgot to wake up themselves. The liquid dribbles down her chin, etching temporary staves into her skin. The crib's smile widens, wooden gums sprouting teeth, carved from your misplaced bone needles. She collapses against the mortar-streaked wall, her hair tangling in a spider's web strung with dead mayflies. You press a rowan twig to her tongue. It roots itself against her soft palate. Dawn bleeds through cracked windows. The finished crib levitates a finger's width above the floor. Her breathing steadies, the violent kicks replaced by an eerie circular motion beneath her ribs. You snap the rowan twig in her mouth. Sap oozes black and viscous. His name's Elias, she whispers, touching her belly with reverence reserved for reliquaries. The crib lands with a thud, its nightshade-oiled joints now fused seamless. You notice the carved smile has migrated to the headboard and gained eyelids. She leaves at noon, waddling past your herb garden without glancing at the belladonna patch. The crib trails her like an obedient hound, dragging a groove through fresh fallen snow. When you return to sweep rowan curls, they've braided themselves into a noose hanging from the rafters. That night, the carpenter arrives with a jar of pickled plums and a rash shaped like musical notation. His hands reek of pine pitch and something older, slick between the knuckles like eel skin. The crib sits pristine in his cart, already stained with milk that isn't bovine. Elias sleeps through anything now, he boasts, pointing to motionless curtains in an upstairs window. You pocket the plums, their brine swirls into the exact pattern of your thumbprint. Historians still argue whether Victorian cradle songs were really incantations to bind restless spirits. Pale fingers flutter behind the glass, too many joints dipping in and out of moonlight. The carpenter's axe leaves flakes of rust on your threshold. You'll find them later fused to a rowan root. At midnight, the crib's lullaby resumes, audible 3 streets away in the weaver's shed. Her newest tapestry shows a tree growing from a woman's womb, or perhaps a woman dissolving into timber. When frost cracks the last of your lavender stalks, you spot Elias peering from his bedroom window. His eyes reflect the belladonna patch's scarlet berries and something carved from older wood. The crib's absence leaves grooves in your floorboards. They collect rainwater that boils without flame. Spring brings rumors, a child who sings in extinct dialects, and a carpenter who carves furniture that rearranges itself at high tide. You distill lavender oil from the last withered blooms. It tastes of amniotic salt and rowan bark. The crib's original shavings still hang knotted from your rafters, swaying to a tune only expectant mothers hear. Mercury pools in your palm mirror. Its quicksilver surface shows tangled embroidery instead of your face. The tailor's commission reeks of bog lichen and grave linen, a wedding doublet ordered by a groom who's been underground since the Crimean War. You prick your thumb testing a needle. 3 droplets bloom. They align with Venus rising in the mirror's ghostly stitchwork. 18th century seamstresses often laced mourning gowns with arsenic-laced green dye, kept moths away, and widow's company. Your bone needle tugs through midnight blue velvet. The fabric resists like skin. Historians still argue whether Victorian memory quilts encoded underground railroad routes or just bad embroidery. The thimble heats up, its tarnished silver brands a crescent into your middle finger. Midnight chimes make the mercury shiver. The phantom stitches rearrange into Cyrillic letters. You dip linen thread in elderberry wine. It dyes the fibers arterial red. A knock startles the cat. Its claws snag the doublet's sleeve, revealing an inner pocket lined with human hair. It's for longevity, rasps the tailor, materializing in your doorway with a basket of mothballed waistcoats. Tungusic tribesmen once stitched bare sinew into wedding tunics, believing the animal's strength passed through the knots. His breath smells of dental powder and decomposing roses. The mercury mirror clouds, now reflecting his empty hands, though you swear he carried a coffin-shaped bundle seconds ago. You mend a moth hole under the armpit. The needle slips, piercing the hair-lined pocket. A viscous Fluid oozes out sweet as rotting peaches. The tailor hums a Kosovan bridal march off-key while unraveling a threadbare cravat. Its fibers wriggle, forming a noose around his brittle wrist. She wants the collar tighter, he says, nodding to the mirror. The mercury shows a woman's silhouette, now her outline stitched with glowing blue thread. 17th century nuns embroidered wedding veils with soluble silver, dissolving the metal into communion wine if the groom proved unfaithful. Your prickled thumb brushes the mirror. It licks the blood eagerly, the stains spreading like ink in milk. Dawn approaches. The doublet sleeves develop a maternal curve you didn't sew. The tailor produces a velvet ocular from his coat. Inside swirls brine and a single human molar. For buttonhole inspiration, he insists. The cat bats at the glass. Its paw emerges dripping seawater and strands of kelp. You reinforce the shoulders with horsehair padding. The stuffing squirms, a nesting mouse. The mercury mirror fogs. Etched numbers appear: 18471, 8531, 861. The tailor coughs. A spiderweb of silk filaments drifts from his lips. Byssus thread spun from mollusk fibers, once reserved for royal shrouds in Macedon. The commission deadline passes, moons wax and wane. The doublet's embroidery metastasizes across your workbench. Jonquil blooms outside. Their pollen coats the mercury, turning the mirror's visions sepia-toned. The tailor leaves gratitude gifts at your door, a snuff box lined with placental membrane, a boot stretcher carved from whalebone arthritis. One humid night, the doublet buttons itself. Pearls carved from tombstone quartz click into place, their edges sharp enough to draw blood. Mercury drips from the mirror. It avoids your collecting jar, snaking toward the cat's water dish instead. The tailor's laughter echoes from the oak wardrobe, last inhabited by a taxidermist's errant badger. You stitch the final sleeve button under candlelight. Your reflection in the mercury now shows the phantom bride wearing the finished garment. Her lace ruff bristles with hedgehog quills, a Lithuanian anti-dowry tactic. The tailor materializes, trailing a wake of disentangled yarn. His throat pulses. Something barbed moves beneath the papery skin. A masterpiece, he croons, extending payment. A thimble crusted in marine fossils. The mirror cracks when you accept it. Mercury oozes into the doublet's seams, animating the embroidery. Carnation buds bloom along the cuffs. They exude pheromones, attracting lunar moths from 3 counties over. The bride's silhouette fades. The mirror now reflects your workroom, warped through a kraken's eye. The tailor's footsteps recede each imprint in the rug sprout's coarse black thread. Cat paw prints lead to a damp spot beneath the wardrobe. It smells of low tide and tuberose. At sunrise, you find the snuff box melted, its membrane lining, cradling a thumbnail-sized pearl. The mercury mirror lies inert, just your tired eyes and a smear of tarnished silver. But when moonlight hits the doublet's buttons, their edges glint with the same hungry sheen as Venus At twilight, you kneel at Owl Creek's edge. The brine stings your cuticles while filling a green glass bottle. 3 weeks now, without a catch. Even the crabs avoid the fishmonger's nets, their hemp fibers fraying like undone sutures. Cod scales litter the bank, each one catching moonlight, spelling out Hagalaz in the old Futhark alphabet. Translation: hail or radical change. Depends which dusty academic you ask. Dead jellyfish glow faintly in the shallows, their bioluminescence weaker each night. You pocket a spiral whelk shell. 18th century sailors ground these into powder for false seafaring maps. The tide retreats faster than usual, stranding a carp that gasps in the mud. Its gills flutter, repeating a word in a dialect your ears refuse to parse. Historians still argue whether Vikings branded runes on creeks to curse rivals or appease water spirits. Your boots sink into silty clay. It sucks at your soles like an infant's grip. The fishmonger's lantern bobs toward you, its flame guttering. He smells of desperation and pickled herring. Even the gulls won't touch the scales, he mutters, kicking a glittering pile. His hands tremor, a souvenir from hauling nets through winter gales. You hold the bottled brackish water to the moon. Turbid swirls form a spiral galaxy. Freshwater eels once migrated through these parts, guided by Earth's magnetic field, until the mill's iron wheels disrupted their compasses. Pine resin drips into your tincture. Its golden beads mingle with the creek's salt. The fishmonger eyes your mortar. That for the rune sickness. You don't correct him. One of his buoys bobs nearby, its bell ringing despite the still air. 3 clangs. Silence. 3 clangs. Underwater lichen clings to your bottle. It pulses faintly. 19th century dive suits used similar growths to gauge oxygen levels. A lichen's curl meant breathe faster. You scrape it off, it bleeds indigo. The creaked shutters, pebbles rearranging into a new glyph. Rado, journey, or ruin. The fishmonger retreats, his boots crunching over scales. Something large surfaces mid-creek, a shadow with lamprey teeth, then submerges. The moon carves runnels of quicksilver across the water. Your reflection wavers, mouth stretched into a pissing gape you never noticed before. By dawn, the bottle's contents separate into distinct layers, brine below, a rainbow oil slick above. The rune scales have vanished, only your boot prints remain, filled slowly by viscous black liquid. It writes nothing readable, just loops like a child's first attempt at cursive. You leave the tincture on the fishmonger's dock. Its label bears no instructions. Rain arrives at noon, pelting the creek into a froth. That night, fresh scales appear, spelling Sowillo. Sun or salvation. The bottle sits unopened, its rainbow film now coating the fishmonger's lone, surviving net. He'll use it tomorrow, or burn it. Either way, the tide keeps retreating, waiting, counting your breaths between each wave. Linen strips float in a copper basin, rose oil swirls like liquid rubies as you knead them with practiced hands. The undertaker's workshop reeks of sap, and fresh-cut pine. His latest coffin gleams, unfinished, in the lamplight. Someone's etched violets into the lid, no chisel marks, just petals blooming through wood grain. Victorian morticians used floral perfumes to mask decomposition, though nothing hides the stench of his unraveling stitches. He paces, his threadbare cuffs catching splinters from every surface. Third time this week, he growls, holding up a shroud with gaping seams. The linen writhes in your grasp, a live eel trying to slither back into its basin. You twist it clockwise, 3 revolutions, mimicking the spiral of a nautilus shell. 17th century sailmakers swore by this method to calm rebellious rigging ropes. Midnight light glints on his needles, each one bent at the tip. They straighten themselves. He mutters, tossing a handful into your apron pocket. Cold seeps through the fabric sharp as gravedigger's teeth. The coffin's violets tremble, their pollen dusts your wrist with blue speckles. Historians still argue whether coffin gardens foretold outbreaks or just mocked the bereaved with false hope. A knuckle wraps the doorframe, the widow from the linden grove. Her black veil flutters, revealing an unscarred cheek, no trace of the fever rashes you treated last autumn. She gestures at the flowered casket, her silence louder than the undertaker's cursing. 18th century mourners carried angelica root to repel grave robbers, though you've heard whispers of modern thieves chewing it like licorice. You dip a brush in the rose oil infusion, stroke it along a suture's frayed edge. The linen stills momentarily before snapping taut. It carves a red line across your palm. The widow exhales her breath, stirs the violets into a frenzied dance. Their roots snake upward, spelling a name in cursive tendrils. Not hers, not the undertaker's. He freezes, a bent needle poised above his thumb. That's impossible, he rasps. The letters resolve. Mariette. A name absent from town records since the railway accident of '93. The basin's oil thickens, swirling into a miniature whirlpool. You drop a rusty nail into its center, an old apothecary trick to disrupt aquatic poltergeists. The widow lunges, snatching the nail before it sinks. She deserved better than a pauper's grave. She hisses, pressing the metal to her tongue. Her pupils dilate, swallowing the lamplight. Maria Antoinette's executioners allegedly stole nails from her coffin to sell as macabre souvenirs. This tidbit seems unhelpful to mention now. Threads leap from the basin, coiling around the widow's ankles. The undertaker's hammer flies off the shelf, shattering the coffin's violet-carved corner. Splinters embed in the wall, arranged into another name. Peter. The air tastes of burnt rye and regret. Your mortar cracks, rose oil dribbling across the floorboards as the linen sutures finally still. Dawn's first light reveals the damage. The casket lid bears 2 names now, Mariette and Peter, their letters sprouting ivy instead of violets. The undertaker stitches their shared shroud with your reinforced thread, each puncture releasing a sigh. The widow sits motionless, her veil stained with pollen, tracing the coffin's new growth. You pocket a bent needle, its chill lingering through the wool. Outside, 3 magpies peck at the workshop steps. Their feathers gleam with the same blue as the fallen pollen. One croaks a foggy note, the opening tone of a funeral dirge. The others join, harmonizing in minor thirds. By noon, the ivy claims the entire coffin, dragging it through the workshop door down the hill toward the overgrown section of the churchyard. The undertaker follows his shadow, merging with the vines. You find his ledger open to today's page. No charge. A violet petal marks the spot, its edges curling into a question mark. That evening, fresh needles appear on your doorstep, straight and sharp. The widow's veil hangs from your hawthorn tree, dripping pollen onto the roots below. You count the droplets, 7 teardrops, 8, 9, before the wind steals them away. Somewhere downhill, the magpie's song continues, interrupted only by the creak of rusted iron gates. Birch bark crackles under your nails, peeling away in papery scrolls that smell of winter sap. The poet's quill bleeds black oak gall ink, pooling in your mortar like spilled night. His verses squirm, half-written couplets coiling around the pestle as you crush rosemary stems over them. Medieval scribes cursed this ink's acidity. It devoured parchment faster than mice in a granary. He coughs, a wet sound that rattles his waistcoat buttons. It's the consumption verses, he insists, tapping a stanza etched into his palm. The letters pulse, ink seeping into creases older than the town's cobblestones. You sprinkle salt, the cheap iodized kind, over his quill tip. 18th century love notes, often hid in birch bark envelopes, though these words smell more like a tomb than a tryst. Midnight wind riffles through loose pages. Sonnets about drowned sailors stick to your sleeves. The mortar darkens, charring the pestil's grain. A rhyme about widows. Tears sizzles, releasing mist that reeks of low tide. Historians still argue whether sailors tattooed poetry on their skin or just tallied ports with crude X's. The poet grabs your wrist, his fingers leaving inky crescents. It needs binding. He rasps, nodding at the quill, now sprouting rootlets. You dip it in honey, 3 counterclockwise swirls, before plunging it into a jar of pickled beets. Appalachian lore claims beet brine quiets talkative spirits. But this quill starts humming Wagner's Götterdämmerung. Pages plaster themselves to the ceiling, forming a mosaic of storm clouds and broken masts. Your shears snip through a tercet about shipwrecked bells, the fragments wriggling like hagfish. A rhyme about anchor chains wraps around your boot, tugging you toward the cellar door. 19th century pharmacists sold maritime elixirs, blended with rust and gull feathers, useless against whatever's unraveling here. The poet collapses, his cravat blooming ink roses where the pestle stained his chest. You pry apart his jaw, pour a tincture of thistle milk and lead shavings down his throat. His tongue uncurls, a scroll crammed with corrections to Homer's Odyssey. Scholars debate If this proves time travel existed, or just confirms poets are terrible plagiarists. Moonlight sharpens the quill's new roots. They drill into floorboards, splintering wood with botanical violence. You sacrifice a jar of fireflies. Their dying glow melts the ink rivers on your walls. One verse about Selkie brides hardens into obsidian, slicing your thumb when you sweep up the shards. Dawn finds the poet snoring in your willow chair, his pockets stuffed with birch bark fragments. The pestle lies buried in salt, its shadow staining the mortar bowl pitch black. Outside, 3 magpies batter their wings against your rain barrel. They've brought offerings: a button, a snail shell, and a scrap of sheet music titled Mariette's Lament. You boil the quill's remains with vinegar and moth wings. The steam sketches a 3-masted schooner above your stove. Its sails ripple, spreading ink across the ceiling, until your kitchen becomes a capsizing diorama. The poet wakes, coughs up a live starling, and stumbles out, clutching his revised epic. By noon, every birch tree in the square bears carved verses, their bark peeling to reveal older words beneath. The town baker swears she saw letters rearranging themselves, bread becoming beard, becoming bared. You pocket a quill-turned root, its thorns drawing blood as familiar as the magpie's song, and lock the polluted mortar in an iron chest. Twilight brings the undertaker's widow, her hair braided with inky parchment. She hums a melody that matches the schooner's ghostly rigging creaks. When you offer her thistle milk, she spits a pearl into the cup. For the next quill, she murmurs, leaving pollen footprints that sink through your floorboards like stones. The whetstone's rasp bites the air, each stroke pulling memories from steel. Your palms sting as the butcher's cleaver drinks the grind, its edge remembering every ribbit split. Victorian slaughterhouses hung axes over doorways to ward off meat-spoiling spirits, a fact your customer snorts at when you mention it. Marrow seeps through his apron, thick ropes of it wriggling across your floorboards. They map crooked patterns between mortar cracks, a stellar nursery of grease and grief. You recognize Cassiopeia's curve in the gunk, or maybe it's just the nausea from yesterday's pickled beet fumes. He slams the blade onto your counter. Won't hold an edge since the solstice. He growls, knuckles white around the handle. The axe hums, vibrating with the echo of cattle lows and tendon snaps. Under its patina, you spot faint cuneiform marks. Historians still argue whether ancient Mesopotamians invented the abattoir or just perfected temple sacrifices. You press an earlobe to the steel, hear the wheeze of a bull led to slaughter in 1893. Yorkshire folklore claims butchers' tools absorb their kill's final breaths. But you're not paid to validate ghost stories. Ragwort oil smokes in your crucible, its bitterness masking the marrow's metallic stink. The cleaver twitches, slicing a lock of your hair before you jerk back. Its shadow stretches across the wall blade, elongating into a scythe, meant to do that. The butcher's chuckle lacks humor, his teeth stained from chewing raw liver tonics. Midnight finds you scrubbing marrow constellations with lye. Each smear lingers, phosphorescent veins pulsing like exposed nerves. Renaissance anatomists sketched the human form traced with starlight, but they never dealt with this bovine zodiac bullshit. You brew a poultice of crushed magnetite and rose hips. The pink sludge hisses when smeared on steel. The cleaver bucks, etching a fresh scratch down your table. Something in the blades changes pitch, a calf's bleat transposed into minor key. Dawn reveals the butcher asleep against your herb cupboard, snoring in time with the whetstone's residual vibrations. His boots track marrow across freshly swept floors, the patterns now spelling Phoenician numerals. You pocket 3 copper coins from his apron, standard fee for midnight tantrums, sentient cutlery. By noon, the cleaver hangs above your doorway. Customers flinch when its shadow grazes their necks. The undertaker's widow pauses beneath it, her pearl from last night glowing in sympathy. Bones talk if you let them rest, she murmurs, flicking marrow off your windowsill. It crystallizes midair, a perfect replica of the Pleiades. You don't ask which bones. Twilight brings the axe's first proper test, a side of lamb that kicks when the blade descends. The cleaver sings, a dirge in F-sharp that rattles your molars. Through the shop window, you watch the butcher trudge home. His shadow stretches 3 paces behind, holding an axe-shaped absence that smells of elderflowers and regret. The tansy leaves crackle in the mortar, their bitterness perfuming the air like scorched almonds. You stir the pestle counterclockwise, 3 revolutions for protection, 9 for spite, a Victorian tonic for unwanted pregnancies, a colonial insect repellent. But tonight's brew serves a livid purple bruise, circling the innkeeper's wife's wrist. Her wedding band digs into your salve tin, leaving crescent indents that smell of buttermilk and deceit. She peels her sleeve higher, revealing fingerprint-shaped blooms under moonlight. He claims it's the rheumatism acting up. She mutters, knuckling salt into the mortar. Historians still argue whether 18th century wives used tansy to poison abusive husbands, or just numbed their own pain. You don't ask. The herb's Latin name, Tanicetum vulgar, literally means immortal commonness. Some questions answer themselves. The concoction froths, releasing vapors that etch wolf faces on your window panes. You smear green paste across her wrist, its chill drawing a gasp. Feels like diving into the mill pond, she whispers, as the bruise fades to a sickly yellow. Tudor midwives once tucked tansy sachets under birthing beds, believing its stench repelled fairy child thieves. You mention this, she laughs, a sound as hollow as a dropped thimble. Her gaze flicks to the doorway, where the butcher's cleaver hangs motionless. Brew extra, she says, pressing coins warm from her corset into your palm. Guests have been restless. You catch the scent of lye soap and male sweat clinging to her hem. The inn's sheets changed too often this week. Steam curls into the rafters, taking the shape of a 4-poster bed frame. The tansy tonics multiply, a battalion of green glass soldiers guarding your shelves. A 1940s study claimed tansy tea cured Nazi soldiers of homesickness, a fact you'd find funnier if your hands weren't blistering from its sap. Midnight finds you stuffing tansy sachets into her embroidered reticule. The dried florets crunch like beetle carapaces. Place these under their pillows, you instruct, though both know she'll line her own bed first. Her shadow stretches toward the cleaver, blurring into its blade's silhouette. She hesitates at the threshold. They say you buried something at the crossroads last full moon. The salve tin trembles, crescent marks glowing like phosphorus. You sprinkle salt over the indentations, watch them hiss into nothingness. Folks say lots of things. You answer, plucking a tansy petal from her hair. It dissolves midair, leaving the tang of unripe blackberries. Dawn leaks through apothecary jars, the tansy's bitterness now undercut with iron. A single petal floats in your teacup, swimming lazy circles. Outside, carriage wheels churn mud where the innkeeper's wife stood. Her footprints smolder faintly, each step sprouting a thorned vine that wilts before touching sunlight. You reseal the tansy tincture, its label now ink blurred from humidity. The cleaver creaks overhead, casting a jagged shadow across your workbench. Somewhere beyond the village square, a guest's nightmare shatters a second-story window. You pocket 3 sachets, just in case, and try to forget how her wedding band left grooves exactly matching the salve tin's new dents. The wolf fat glistens in its clay pot, a stolen luxury from the taxidermist's moonlit dump heap. You work it into cracked leather, fingertips memorizing every scar the cobblers all left behind. Napoleon's armies once greased their boots with goose fat during the Russian winter, though these soles have seen worse than snow. The leather drinks the oily balm, wrinkles smoothing like river stones under touch. Footsteps haggle outside, their rhythm spells poverty. A child's shoe sits half-mendied on your bench, its sole thinner than communion wafers. You bury the wolf-fat jar cobblers who sold animal renderings during the Great Famine got strung up as meat profiteers. Historians still argue whether medieval cordwainers used rendered human fat for waterproofing. Tonight's answer arrives as a gaunt face pressed to your window. He stumbles in boots, whispering secrets with every step. The right sole flaps like a hungry gull's beak. 3 days where left, you lie rubbing juniper oil into stitches. His heel reveals a tattooed compass rose, needlework sharper than anything local. Saxon sailors marked their feet with navigation symbols, a charm against getting lost at sea. This one points due west. Your blade trims rotten leather. It peels away like sunburnt skin. Got any whalebone for the arch? He asks, too casual. The request hangs between you. Whalers abandoned this coast 80 winters past. You toss him a dried cod spine instead. Same support, better conversation. He chuckles. The sound dies when his gaze snags on the cobbler's awl. Midnight oil smokes in its lamp, casting your joined shadows on the wall. They look like a two-headed wolf chewing through a map. You stitch silently. He hums a shanty about drowned men's teeth. 17th century Dutch cobblers reportedly lined shoes with horsehair from hanged men's nooses for durability. The needle pricks your thumb. A bead of blood christens the soul. His bare foot taps an anxious cadence. Heard you fixed the innkeeper's problem. The wolf fat jar sweats between jars of nail polish remover, a 1920s beauty experiment gone useful. You knot the thread extra tight where the compass points inland. Fixing's temporary, you mutter. Everything wears through eventually. Dawn arrives as you hammer the final nail. He tests the sole's flex, eyes narrowing at the hidden cod bone. Payment clinks onto the bench, 3 buttons and a musket ball. From the old garrison well, he boasts. You pocket them, knowing the well's been dry since smallpox took the garrison's children. He leaves through the alley, repaired soles, crunching last autumn's walnuts. The awl trembles in its drawer, its tip stained faintly blue. Cobblestone echoes fade, replaced by the drip of spilled wolf fat. You count each drop. They total 13 before dawn birds drown them out. The child's shoe still gapes, its laces coiled like waiting nooses. You reopen the wolf fat jar, swear its grown teeth overnight. A proper cobbler would have used beeswax, but proper cobblers don't survive seasons this lean. The jar hisses when sealed, a sound almost like warning, almost like thanks. The wolf fat's hissing fades, replaced by the creak of rope on timber. You pocket the jar. Its new jagged bite matches your thumbprint. Outside, the gallows sways without wind. Rome's executioners chewed mint to hide the stench of crucifixions. This sprig's sharper. Dawn spills weak tea light over the scaffold. Your shears snip dried mint. Crushed leaves release ghosts of last summer's rain. 18th century. Hangmen secretly planted pennyroyal around gallows to keep bereaved lovers from digging up bodies. The soil here sprouts spearmint instead, its roots gnawing at something buried 6 feet up. A coin rolls across your table, 1,782 Spanish real. Edges green with cellar mold. For the rot, rasps a voice from the doorway. Execution victims once carried mint under their tongues, a bribe for afterlife ferrymen. This man's breath smells of river mud and envy. You steep leaves in vinegar. The brew bubbles like a dying man's throat. Historians still argue whether gallows timber cured rheumatism or just gave fools an excuse to touch death. His hands shake, knuckles swollen into gnarled oak apples. 12 years since they hung my brother here. The mint syrup thickens. You drip it over a sugar cube. Swallow, don't chew. He obeys, face puckering at the bitterness beneath sweetness. Tudor midwives used similar potions to purge unwed mothers of green sickness. His Adam's apple bobs, a noose-worthy motion. The gallows groans again, sounds like a boothiel grinding into soft neck vertebrae. Payment clinks into your mortar 3 Spanish coins and a pewter thimble. You pretend not to recognize his brother's initials etched inside. Dawn birds gossip in the elms, their songs out of tune. Victorians believed mint could mute the screams of murdered children, a theory you're testing tonight. He leaves through the overgrown churchyard, kicking mint clusters with each step. You press a leaf to your wrist. Veins briefly map alternate routes. The syrup bowl cracks as it dries, a jagged line bisecting your reflection. Rot licks the air again, thicker now. You bury mint sprigs under the gallows. Their roots will either cleanse the soil or get strangled. A plank shifts overhead. Dirt sprinkles your collar like cheap talcum. When you look up, the noose sways clockwise. Your compass stopped working 3 paragraphs ago. The gallows chill clings like flour dust as you duck into the bakery. Charred loaves smolder in the hearth, their smoke twisting into hollow-eyed faces above. You know the recipe. Grief at 400 degrees. Mrs. Porter's oven sits cold, its iron mouth stained with old ash. Her boy marched off with Hanoverian conscripts last spring, 17, and already forgotten by the crown. Burnt crusts crumble under your fingers, carbonized wheat whispering of draft notices nailed to church doors. 18th century bakers often added sawdust to stretch flour, though you doubt that's why these loaves crackle. They took his milling stone too. She mutters, knuckles whitening around a rolling pin. The rafters creak. Smoke shapes now form a young man's profile, missing its left ear. You pocket a crust blacker than printer's ink. Ash has purged wounds since Roman field hospitals. Her hands tremble as she offers beetroot sugar, a poor substitute for the honey soldiers confiscated. Male conscripts over 5'7", that's the regulation they quoted before snapping her lockbox. Why do all tyranny come in measurements? Historians still argue whether conscription notices were drawn by lot or magistrates' personal grudges. You've seen both, names scribbled on ale-stained warrants under false pretenses. The smoke face mouths something. Could be mother, could be mold. A burnt loaf perches on the windowsill. Local superstition says it absorbs envious gazes. You've yet to see it work. Her remaining flour sack bulges with moth wings. War takes strange taxes. The last ember dies. You grind the char into a paste with hog's lard. She'll rub it on draft notices tonight, a feudal ward against fresh conscripts. As you leave, the smoke face winks. Whether it's her son or the oven's spite, you keep walking. Moonlight turns the well's bucket into a quicksilver mirror. You see teeth sharper than your own staring back. The ladle's handle sticks. Someone's melted a Saxon penny into the wood. You know the ritual. 3 dips for truth, 1 for lies. Babylonian water diviners once charted fate through ripples, though their wells probably didn't grow like in spelling Nebuchadnezzar in cursive. Your reflection grins wider, a merchant's smile from when this village traded Phoenician glass. 17th century well wishes required dropping coins, but silver's scarce since the miller hoarded shillings in his clock. The stones hum against your palm, mossy vowels vibrating through bone. Historians still argue whether ancient aquifers carried voices, or just the weight of too many wishes. A toad plops into the water, your twin's face dissolves into ripples. You murmur the old rhyme, Kerbat too, dug at midnight. The village claims THS, well never dries, even when plague baked the earth. Funny how no one mentions the Celtic skeleton they found chained to its base last winter. 3 coins shine beneath the algae, 2 Tudor roses, and something triangular. They say Spanish naval engineers, paid in geometric currency, got too creative near the Azores. Your fingers brush cold metal. It's warm when you lift it. The reflection reappears, lips moving. Could be Aramaic. Could be static from your own pulse. A frog leaps onto your boot, its throat puffing Babylonian glyphs. You'd laugh if the water wasn't climbing the bucket on its own. 18 words spill from the well in no language you recognize, each syllable raising gooseflesh. The ladle snaps, half sinks like an arrowhead. You pocket the triangle coin. It thrums against your thigh like a misplaced heartbeat. Back in Nineveh, they'd have called this a demon's gratuity. Here, just Tuesday, the moss rearranges into cuneiform as you walk away, each step echoing a name forgotten before dawn. The woad vat exhales its grassy stink. Your wool clouds bruise blue in the moonlight. Carding combs whisper through clumped fibers. The spinster's tomcat narrows sulphur eyes. You pretend not to notice his pupils, slit mirrors reflecting your every tug. Medieval dyers swore you're in fixed indigo pigments, but tonight's batch reeks of vinegar and desperation. A skein squirms in your grip, twisting like a hanged man's rope. The cat hisses at nothing, unless you count the shadow knitting itself in the corner. Pathetic, you mutter, comparing the kinked yarn to last week's mutton stew noodles. 2 centuries back, Holland banned woad imports to protect their precious indigo trade. You wonder if smugglers ever hid sapphire threads in sheep's stomachs. Seems like a Dutch move. The tomcat pounces. A wooden spindle rolls into ashes beneath the hearth. 5 blackened nails protrude from the soot. Historians still argue whether 13th century spinners timed their work to moon phases or just hated daylight. You're siding with misanthropy. Midnight chimes. Fresh wool spills from your apron, undyed strands tangling around your boots. A joke forms, something about sheep plotting revenge, but dies when the cat arches its back. Skeins unravel across the floorboards, coils forming cuneiform even Babylonians would find harsh. 1 thread snakes up your skirt cold as a mortician's ring. You recall Venetian silk merchants training spiders, their webs gilded for bishop garments. The spinster swore she'd never touch arachnid yarn, but that was before her nephew vanished into a loom. The cat yowls its claws, shredding a forming braid. 8 purple strands levitate, humming a Gregorian chant backward. You blame the woad fumes until the hearth spindle spins on its own. A nail pierces your thumb. Blood darkens the wool to arterial crimson. Fantastic, you sigh, wrapping the cut with a strip of linen. 17 steps to the door each creak, accompanied by yarn lashing your ankles. The tomcat sprints outside his tail, bottle brushed, at whatever's rising from the dye pot. You almost miss the spinster's note pinned beneath a thimble. Don't let him play with the red skein. Too late, the fibers on your wrist pulse, a vein leading somewhere ancient and vertical. The cat watches from the gutter, washing blood from his paws. Leather gloves rasp against stinging nettles, each leaf's hairs snap like tiny fireworks. The churchyard air tastes of iron and turned earth, which tracks since old Tom's grave sank another foot overnight. You recall medieval monks brewing nettle tea for arthritis, though none mention the plants, hissing when plucked. Should have brought earplugs. You tell the headstone, its name eroded to eth, beloved demoher. 3 graves over fresh soil mounds resembles a child's sandcastle at low tide. Your shears snag a root. It bleeds milky sap smelling of burnt hair. 14th century herbalists swore nettle stew cured baldness. But you're not risking that aroma in your shop. The priest's shadow stretches toward you sharp as a sundial's blade, despite midnight's chokehold. It bisects a crumbling angel, one wing light, the other swallowed by void. You sprinkle salt on the nettle pile. Someone's gotta counterbalance this gothic nonsense. Moonlight glints off your flask, a smuggled espresso from Signora Rossi's forbidden percolator. Historians still argue whether Victorian gravekeepers planted nettles to deter robbers or hungry ghosts. You're betting on drunks mistaking leaves for spinach. The first sip scalds your breath, fogs in warped Latin script. Gloves darken with dew, or maybe the nettle's venom seeping through. 16 leaves per bundle, same number as the steps to your cellar. You count aloud, 6, until a soil clod hits your boot. The sunken grave bubbles, wet gurgles rising through mud. Charming, you mutter, tossing a penny into the hole. Roman Britons buried coins to pay ferrymen, but this just gets you a wet shoe. The nettles shiver, their stems curling into Celtic knotwork. You pocket 3 twists, future bargaining chips for that village witch who hates your lavender sachets. The priest's shadow twitches west against all cosmic rules. His rectory window stays dark. You inspect a nettle's underside, spot aphids marching in phalanx formation. Scholars once claimed ants farmed nettle bugs for sugar, which explains their tiny helmets. Midnight shifts, air thickening like congealed soup. Your apron snags on a bramble, revealing fresh earth where no roots should be. A shoe protrudes, Oxford leather too polished for a corpse. The nettles recoil, singing a nursery rhyme in backwards Gaelic. Profit margin just tanked. You sigh, snapping gloves off with practiced disgust. 11 nettle bundles remain, each tied with hair from, well, better not ask. The sunken grave exhales, mist sketching a face halfway between mare and feral hog. You lob a salt rock, the visage dissolves with a wet sniff. Ancient Egyptians stuffed mummies' noses with peppercorns. Meanwhile, you're hustling spiced nettles for insomniac bakers. The priest's shadow detaches, ooze dripping from its cuffs, as old Tom's headstone cracks down the middle. A moth escapes, wings dusted with numerals. You clock the time too. 17 a.m. Precisely when your ledger promised quaint herb gathering. Tweezers pluck a stinger from your wrist. The welt pulses Morse code. Churchyard nettles thrive on bones. But tonight's crop reeks of bergamot and panic. The priest's silhouette lengthens into the woods, dragging something lumpy and whimpering. You light a sage stick. Its smoke coils into Roman numerals above the spoiled grave. 3 nettles remain, roots knotted around a silver molar. You leave it, along with a vial of foxglove oil. Let the next fool play dentist. Dawn scratches the horizon. Your shadow stretches east. Freshly cut leaves rustling lies in their burlap coffin. Dawn licks the brewery's cobwebbed windows as you wipe nettle grit from your sleeves. 18 oak barrels stare like disgruntled jurors. Their hoops rusted, their staves swollen with decades of spilled wort. You trace a thumb over the newest cask, its wood unnaturally cold despite the steeping vat's residual heat. Black ale seeps through the bunghole, viscous drops crawling down like molasses, fleeing daylight. You press a wax seal against the leak, it melts into a screaming face. Not your best work, you tell the barrel, but the face winks. Tudor brewers used juniper as a preservative, though none documented their casks, producing Rorschach horror shows. The brewer's ledger lies open, 18 years marked with X's bleeding into each other. Last month's entry stains your fingertip, iron oxide pretending to be ink. You sniff, metallic tang undercut by something vegetal. A floorboard creaks, or maybe the ledger's spine exhaling. His tools hang from the rafters, copper coils still dripping despite being drained at sunset. Historians still argue whether medieval alewives added hemlock for clarity or just better tipsy theatrics. You're betting on both. The weeping barrel groans, air escaping in a high F-sharp. Your cork feels inadequate, like offering a band-aid to a guillotine victim. Raven feathers float in the foam bucket, no birds in sight. 19th century London brewers blamed hops madness on arsenic-laced malt. But this reeks of older math. You swipe a thumb through the ale's residue. It etches a Nordic rune onto your skin. The floor shifts, planks warped into a spiral pattern. 18 footsteps to the door, same as the barrel's count. Symmetry's overrated. You tell the cask, dropping 3 nettle twists into its maw. The screaming wax face dissolves with a burp. Cobwebs tremble, but no spiders brave the vapors. You pocket the ledger. Its pages stick together like post-orgy glue. Moonlight pierces a cracked vat, revealing fungi growths shaped like human molars. Something patters in the grain chute. claws skittering up tin. 18th century Bavaria had beer purity laws, which obviously didn't account for sentient mildew. A copper pipe, shutters spewing black ale across your boots. The liquid writhes, forming words in early modern English before dissolving. You recognize, too, thou and betrayed. The ledger's X's glow faintly, annual tallies or sacrificial markers. You chalk a protective sigil on the door jamb. It fizzles on contact. The brewer's wedding ring hangs from a nail, still warm. Corkscrews litter the workbench, each bent into Fibonacci spirals. The final barrel hums, a tune the town bard whistled before vanishing in 9. You count to 18 in Gaelic. The ale stops weeping. For now, distant church bells toll, except the priest sold his bell last Tuesday. The brewer's shadow pools at your feet, fingers reaching for the ledger. You drop a nettle bundle into his spectral palm. Receipts in the mail. You lie backing toward the sulphur-tinged dawn. The barrel's bunghole seals itself. Trapped air hissing lyre in perfect Yorkshire dialect. 18 years, 18 X's, 18 steps to forget whatever just puppeteered your pulse. Your shadow walks ahead, already rehearsing tonight's lies to the next client. The ledger weighs nothing, yet pulls your sleeve toward the river. 18 paces later, you're still counting. Your boots sink into pond mud. As dawn cracks the sky, cold water seeps through your left sole's newly stitched patch. Ripples distort the fish pond's surface until a lotus bud parts the muck like a sleepwalker's hand. Its petals unfurl too fast, cream edges already bleeding pink. You hate show-offs. A carp surfaces, one eye milky, the other judging your life choices. Heard about the brewery, did you? You mutter. The fish blinks, sinks, leaves oil-slick bubbles mocking your reflection. Ancient Egyptian priests used blue lotuses in dream rituals, though none mention flowers growing through 3 feet of New England silt overnight. The stem resists your shears, rubbery persistence beneath the blade. Sap oozes, smells like burnt honey and second-hand guilt. Historians still argue whether medieval plague doctors used lotus tinctures as sedatives, or just liked the way petals wilted in vinegar. You snap the stem, a hollow pop echoes over the water. Petals brush your wrist, leave numbing fingerprints. The apothecary ledger lies open on a mossy rock. Today's date stares back with blank page audacity. You press the lotus against the parchment. It bleeds a date. October XVII, MDCLXVI. The Great Fire of London raged that year. Convenient coincidence or florist arson? Your money's on the florist. A bullfrog croaks, 3 beats, rest, 3 beats. Morse code for stop stealing local flora. You toss it a nettle seed. It spits the offering back with Olympic accuracy. 17th century herbalists claimed lotus roots could cure baldness, though surviving portraits suggest they tested the theory exclusively on unwilling apprentices. The lotus wilts in your satchel, a muffled sigh escaping leather. Your shadow stretches west. Dawn shouldn't cast shadows that direction. The carp resurfaces, now sporting a jaunty lily-pad hat. Subtle, you tell the pond. Ripples answer in concentric smirks. Mud sucks at your heels as you retreat, each step popping like a cork from last night's barrel. The ledger flap twitches, blank page now showing twin fishhooks where your name should be. You sprinkle yarrow dust. It combusts into green flame. Drama queens, you tell the paperwork. Church bells toll 7 times, but the belfry's been bird-nested since Easter. The lotus stem in your pocket writhes, digging for escape routes. You secure it with a sailor's knot. Because why not offend maritime deities today? Wind carries the miller's cough downstream, a wet staccato riding the mist. The ledger flips pages autonomously, settling on a sketch of your boots from 3 angles. Renaissance botanists drew mandrake screaming, but your footwear, that's new. The lotus petal in your palm dissolves, leaves a map of the pond's floor in spit and chlorophyll. X marks a depression where the carp now lounges, waving a fin over something glinting. You've seen enough pirate flicks to know better. Dew collects in the ledger's gutter, a tiny mirror for the scowling sun. The fish pond exhales, releasing the scent of overstepped bergamot. You count 12 bubbles, 13, 14. The pond stills. The ledger dries. Your left boot surrenders to mud with a wet gasp. Somewhere beyond the birches, a door knocker clangs against silent air. The lotus root pulses once in your satchel, thump, thump, thump. You walk east. The carp blows a bubble chain salute. Dawn's second act floods the valley. Amber light, catching the one thing you refuse to name, glinting in the deep. The pestle scrapes stone. Yesterday's ashen remedies cling like resentful ghosts. Embers gutter in the hearth. Their death rattle smells of burnt rosemary and poor life decisions. Blisters pucker your palm from dawn's lotus caper, a floral heist that earned 0 applause from the local carp. You sweep charred valerian roots into the mortar. Their fibers whisper secrets as they crumble. Historians still argue whether Roman plague masks held medicinal herbs or just filtered the stink of bureaucrats. Your money's on the stink. A draft licks the workshop, shelves rattle like a gambler's teeth. The ledger lies bloated under yarrow ash, its pages swollen with yesterday's arrogance. 17th century Dutch tulip traders once burned entire ledgers to erase debts. You're tempted. The door knocker clangs again, 3 staccato, raps no living wrist could muster. We're closed to spectral solicitation. You announce. Dust motes swirl into a middle finger collapses. Your shadow mimics the gesture traitor. Ash drifts onto your sleeve, forms a tiny map of Constantinople. You snort. It's missing 3 key siege towers. Ottoman coffee grounds allegedly predicted the city's fall, but your debris lacks ambition. The pestle cracks mid-grind. A hairline fracture whispers through the mortar. Mongol warriors carried portable stone mortars to crush herbs, and occasionally enemy knuckle bones. You file that under inspiring trivia and reasons to order takeout. Something thumps in the root cellar, rhythmic, patient, already bored with your lack of panic. You sprinkle mugwort powder across the threshold. 93% of medieval exorcisms involved this stuff, and 93% failed spectacularly. Your boot nudges the ledger. It belches fish pond silt across the floorboards. Blackened muck spells mu letter 1 FC6, new iota new, Homer's opening word for rage. Coincidence? Absolutely. But great party trivia if you survive the hour. The knocker hammers a shanty, this time 7 beats per maritime tradition. You hum a sea chanty about syphilitic mermaids. The wood stills. Navy medics once treated scurvy with lichen paste, tastes like despair, and poor career choices. Ashes swirl into a miniature tornado above the mortar. Your reflection warps in its vortex. Victorian mediums faked ectoplasm with cheesecloth and egg whites. But this lacks showmanship. You lob a dried toadstool into the funnel. Violence solves most problems. The tornado coughs, sputters, collapses into a grease stain. The knocker applauds 2 muted claps. Moonlight bleeds through the filthy window. Your shadow now stretches east and west simultaneously. A crow lands on the sill, drops a lotus petal stiff with frost. You pocket it, free bookmark. The cellar door creaks, open scent of wet fur, and unanswered letters wafts up. You toss a ball of beeswax downstairs. Silence follows. Ancient Persians sealed messages in wax half were insults between rival alchemists. The pestle shatters, shrapnel nicks your earlobe. Blood pearls, drips, splatters the ash map. Constantinople now sports a crimson river to match its history. Your laugh startles even the dust. Dawn's second wind rattles the shutters. Golden light carves knife edges across the room. The ledger flips to the fishhook page, now crossed out with something resembling a smiley face. You've seen worse treaties. A key grinds in the shop's front lock, though you burned the keyhole shut in 02. The knocker shivers, its iron mouth frozen mid-sneer. 19th century ghost hunters used door knockers as spirit amplifiers, succeeded only in annoying neighbors. Your satchel coughs up the decomposed lotus. Its stem coils around a pewter thimble. You chuck it into the cooling hearth. Flames burp turquoise. The knocker applauds again. Encore demands. Floorboards groan shift, form a ridge mimicking the carp's spine. You pour elderflower syrup along the warp. Sweetness soothes most grudges. The wood sighs, settles, betrays nothing. Bells toll 8 times across the valley, though the churchyard lies harvest quiet. You bite the remnant lotus petal. Numbness spreads like gossip. Archaeologists found blue lotus pollen in Tutankhamun's tomb, probably his dealer's leftovers. The first customer arrives. Footsteps crunch gravel outside. The knocker spins, slows, stops. Through the cracked door, morning light reveals nothing but your own boot prints filling with liquid shadow. You toss the last ash into the hearth. It curdles into something resembling applause. The pestil's remains glint from the floor, sharp enough to cut tomorrow's complaints. The hearth exhales its final ember, a winking orange, eye dimming to gray. You press a thumb to the bleeding earlobe, warmth blooms, then fades. A fleeting reminder of pulse and purpose. The shattered pestle lies, spent at your feet, its jagged edges blurring in the softening light. Dawn's honeyed glow seeps through the warped glass, amber liquid pooling between floorboard cracks. Shadows retreat to their corners, hearth ash settling like well-fed cats. Even the knocker droops, its iron jaw slack with exhaustion. You count the cellar's breaths, slow, steady, matching your own. A breeze lifts the lotus petal from your pocket. It alights on the stained Constantinople map. Crimson rivers fade to faint pink smudges. History gentled by morning. You trace what's left of the siege towers, your fingertip stirring motes that might be dust, might be ghosts. The ledger creaks open one last time, its pages sighing into stillness. Fish pond silt, letters blur, the Greek rage word dissolving into water stains. You snap it shut, a muffled thump that startles no one. Your boot finds the pewter thimble beneath the workbench, tarnished, dented, perfect. You roll it across your palm, 1930-something rotations before it stills. The floorboards hum, a bass note too deep for human ears, then hush. Lichen paste jars clink softly as you wash them, their bitterness rinsed downstream. Mugwort powder fizzes in the drain, releasing the faintest scent of forgotten apologies. The crow returns, wings brushing the window in a downbeat rhythm, then vanishes. You smooth the syphilitic mermaid's song into silence, humming dissolves into breath. Night's last tremor shivers through the rafters, answered by a single falling wisteria blossom from nowhere. It lands in the mortar, purple silk against stone grit. Moonlight surrenders to gold, liquid warmth pools around your ankles. The carp-approved lotus theft feels distant now, a half-remembered play act. You pluck a sprig of rosemary from your sleeve, crush it absently, sweetness coats your palm. Iron shivers as the front lock clicks, an empty echo. You lean into the doorframe, wood grain pressing familiar patterns into your spine. Boot prints outside blur at the edges, rainwater, or something gentler filling their hollows. Twilight's remnants cling to the rafters, cobwebs glinting like misplaced constellations. Your shadow stretches, yawns, folds itself beneath the workbench. The world holds its breath, or perhaps forgets to breathe at all. You murmur the last incantation, 2 syllables lost to daylight. Silence answers, a velvet weight draping the shelves, the jars, the quiet spaces between. Sleep arrives not as a thief, but as a librarian extinguishing lamps, one by one by one.